Please be seated. How wonderfully this week our passages from 1 John and John complement one another. Whether written by John, the beloved disciple, or those who followed him in their church community, both passages from the New Testament speak to us in the school of John. The frequency of the word abide between the two passages captures that quite well. On the night before Jesus died for them and for us, Jesus told his disciples, "Abide in me as I abide in you. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing." And then, writing to the church more broadly, the author of 1 John says, "God abides in those who confess that Jesus is the Son of God, and they abide in God. So we have known and believed the love that God has for us." The church, when both of these were written, were dealing with people who had confessed Jesus but had fallen away. They weren't able to abide in professing Jesus as God's Son. And meanwhile, the church that stayed with following Jesus was facing its own trials. Those who were bearing fruit, living God-filled lives, were experiencing pruning, trimming away to grow stronger and know even more abundantly fullness of life in Jesus. Despite Jesus' best wish and his direction to his disciples, we have not abided in Jesus' life and love. Jesus, being the vine, makes us all branches, rooted to the vine, the source of our being. Jesus assures us that we are cleansed, that we have been washed in the waters of baptism, sprinkled today to remember your own, remembering the Ethiopian eunuch who asked, "What is to prevent me from being baptized?" At the same time that Jesus tells us that we are cleaned, he warns us that there will need to be clean cuts, pruning. There's a fun little play on words there in Greek. Throughout its history, the church has failed so spectacularly at abiding in Jesus' love. Racism, colonialism, and genocide have been carried out in Jesus' name. The author of 1 John tells us that God is love. There's nothing loving about killing other people, even in Jesus' name. There's nothing loving about enslaving other people or stealing their land. And there's nothing loving about staying silent, staying complicit, as we're called to the fullness of life in Jesus. Learning our mistakes, not just learning from them, but learning what they are, is difficult. The church has made many mistakes, has struggled to abide in Jesus from the time there was a church. It's not that we ourselves, here and now, are messed up. We're all human. And as long as humans have been a part of this redemption arc that God is carrying out, there's always been trouble. There's always been trouble abiding in Jesus, knowing the fullness of his life, and sharing the true freedom we find in Jesus' resurrection. Jesus knew that was going to be a problem. The writers of 1 John and John were seeing that reality of struggling 60 years after Jesus' ascension. In his farewell address, which we hear from today, Jesus tells the disciples, "Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing." Apart from me, you can do nothing. Jesus is not only warning the disciples of their weakness, but assuring them that they'll be okay. Elsewhere, he promises that he'll send a helper in this same farewell discourse. But having been grafted to Jesus in the early church in the waters of baptism, grafted to him by seeing his resurrection, these original disciples, they're called to his mission, sharing the good news that Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and to those in the tombs, bestowing life. The writer of 1 John elaborates on this point in expounding on God's love and expectation. God is love. And those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. We love because he first loved us. And the commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their siblings also. Yes, the church has failed in so many ways through so much of time. And the church is still failing. When last summer, parts of this body of which we are part, other branches of this vine of Jesus, valued insured property over the lives of black people killed by police. Ask any queer person, including ordained clergy, and you'll learn the ways that the church continues to hurt them, even as we try our best. Former subjects of the British Empire and forced converts to Anglicanism know all too well how the church has failed to abide in Jesus' love. Because apart from Jesus, we can do nothing. But knowing those failures, knowing them, learning them, and working to rectify them is one way of abiding in Jesus. With Jesus, whether those who called for abolition of slavery in our history, or those faithful Christians at demonstrations now, or those martyred by the church through time for resisting oppression, there's hope. There is hope with Jesus. The church has failed, but Jesus calls us back. Being pruned collectively and individually, being ongoingly converted and reconverted to follow Jesus can hurt. People lament being disillusioned as though maintaining an illusion is the better course. When the vine dresser prunes us, breaks those illusions we have, cuts back that which holds us back, we're able to better abide in God and God's love and to love our siblings. Jesus prunes us individually and collectively so that we may better know his love. Jesus prunes our hearts so that we may know his heart better. And through him, share the freedom we have found in him. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them.